Good afternoon, students. Today we will discuss the 10th chapter of 8th class CBSE book, that is The Changing World of Visual Arts. Before starting this topic, I want to discuss the meaning of visual arts. What is visual arts? Actually, the art which can be seen is considered visual arts like painting, sculpture, photography, etc. When we look at a work of art, whether it is painting or sculpture, we can realize that like most other things, the art is too influenced by the world around it. Although initially it may not be realized that these arts can change our views and ideas. In this chapter, we will discuss about the changes in the world of visual arts during colonial period, and this chapter will be discussed under some subparts like first is new form of imperial art. In this topic, we will discuss about looking for the picturesque. After it, we will discuss about portraits of authority. And about painting history. After it, we will discuss about second topic, that is what happened to court artists. Later on, we will see the new popular Indian art. After it, we will discuss about photographic India. Photographic India. And at last, we will discuss about the search for a national art. Under this last topic, we will discuss about the art of Raja Ravi Verma and a different vision of national art in reference to Avanindranath Tagore. The art of Raja Ravi Verma. Who followed Western technology and later on a different vision of national art. At first, we will discuss about new forms of imperial art. The art which was introduced by colonial power, or we can say European artists, is known as imperial art. From the 18th century, a stream of European artists came to India along with the British traders and rulers. These artists brought with them new styles of paintings. These artists began producing pictures which became widely popular in Europe and helped to shape Western perceptions of India. Which new styles of paintings were introduced in India? Actually, the idea of realism, oil painting and superiority of British was introduced in India at that time. How? Like new forms of imperial art. At first we will discuss the meaning of imperial art. As I have told you earlier that the art which was introduced by European artists was termed as imperial art. This kind of art was patronized by British or we can say by colonial power. During colonial rule. Which new techniques were introduced under this imperial art? Three new techniques were introduced which were not familiar for Indians at that time, or we can say during 18th century. And these three new techniques were, the first is new styles and new techniques. The first is idea of realism. Second is oil painting. And the third one is varied subjects, but showed the superiority of British. The first is idea of realism. European artists brought with them the idea of realism. This was a belief that artists had to observe carefully and depict faithfully what the eye saw, so that everything which was produced by artists looked real and lifelike. Oil technique. This was the technique by which Indian artists were not familiar at that time. Why European artists introduced oil techniques? Actually, they thought that the images produced through oil paintings looked real. Oil paintings help to show the expressions clearly. That's why this kind of painting was introduced by British in 18th century. Now the third one is various subjects but showed superiority of British. Actually different kinds of subjects were painted by the painters, by the artist, but the theme was same, like all the artists wanted to show the superiority of British. That's why British were the center of these kinds of paintings. At that time, the period of 18th century, not all European artists in India were inspired by the same things. The subjects they painted were various. The subjects they painted were differ from each other's subject. How can we say that their subjects were various? Like some painted Indian landscape, buildings, other painted victory in battles, and some other painted British officials in their festive mood, but they all painted a common thing. Which common thing was presented, which common thing was painted by all of these artists? They all showed the superiority of Britain, its culture, its power, and its majesty. Now we will discuss about a few major trends with imperial art. And the first is looking for the pictures. That is also our first subtopic, looking for the picturesque. One popular imperial tradition was that of picturesque landscape painting. Now the question arises, what was picturesque? Actually, this style of painting depicted India as a quaint land. It means this land was not under the control of Britishers at that time, and it had to be explored by traveling British artists. Its landscape was rugged and wild, seemingly untamed by human hands. Thomas Daniel and his nephew William Daniel were the most famous of the artists who painted within this tradition. It means Thomas Daniel and his nephew William Daniel made this kind of paintings. They came to India in 1785 and stayed for near about 7 years. Journeying from Calcutta to northern and southern India, they produced some of the most evocative picturesque landscapes of Britain's newly conquered territories in India, like Clive Street in Calcutta, ruins on the banks of the Ganges at Gazipur. These paintings were painted by Thomas Daniel and his nephew William Daniel. Their large oil paintings on canvas were regularly exhibited to select audiences in Britain, and their albums of engravings were eagerly bought up by a British public keen to know about Britain's empire. Now we will discuss about the meaning of engravings. Like, what is the meaning of engravings? A picture printed onto paper from a piece of wood or metal into which the design or drawing has been cut is known as engravings. Picturesque. In this technique, India was presented as a quaint land. India was presented as a quaint land. And major contribution was Thomas Daniel and William Daniel. Under this art, the land which was untamed, presented by these artists. This picture is also an example of picturesque, and this picture shows ruins on the banks of Ganges. At Gazipur. This painting was made by Thomas Daniel, and it is an oil painting made in 1791. In this painting, the ruins of local buildings that were grand once were shown. The buildings are reminders of past glory, remains of an ancient civilization that was now in ruins. It was as if this decaying civilization would change and modernize only through British governance. Actually, by presenting these pictures, they wanted to show like Indian people could only be civilized by Western culture, by British people, as it was also suggested by James Mill in his book A History of British India. Like Indians could only be civilized by British people and Western education. Through these kind of pictures, they wanted to show the superiority of British culture. This painting was made by Thomas and William Daniel, and this is Clive Street in Calcutta, which was drawn in 1786. Clive Street in Calcutta, made by Thomas Daniel and William Daniel. In 1786. This image of British rule bringing modern civilization to India is powerfully emphasized in the numerous pictures of late 18th century Calcutta drawn by the Daniels. In these drawings, we can see the making of a new Calcutta with wide avenues, majestic European style buildings, and new modes of transport. That is also presented in this picture. There is a life and activity on the roads. There is a drama and excitement. And in this picture, they showed India under British rule. Figure first, that is ruins on the banks of Gangapur at Ghazipur, represent the traditional life of India as pre-modern, changeless and motionless. Whereas figure second, that is Clive Street in Calcutta, shows the modernizing influence of British rule by emphasizing a picture of dramatic change. So while we compare these two pictures, we can see they wanted to show their superiority. They wanted to show the supremacy of British rule, British culture and their education. In our next video, we will discuss about the portraits of authority and painting history, and after it we will discuss the other subparts of this chapter.